Hello and welcome. So you know those videos that a lot of booktubers do where they talk about their anticipated releases and what they want to read for that quarter or that half of year or even just for the year? And something that I wonder is, do people actually go through with that? Is it just kind of a wish list and I really would like to read that, or are they books that people actually are trying to read? So I did videos where I wanted to read 22 books that were released in 2022, and I made it a goal for the year, and I actually read all 22. So I just wanted to go through them because I kind of like that follow-up of, if I said I was interested in reading those, sharing them to you to let you know what could be worth your time versus what is not worth your time might be helpful. So I'm gonna start in the chronological order, meaning the books that I'm sharing first are the ones that came out the earliest in 2022. So I'm also doing them just by the quarter. So I'm not going to do them by publishing order, but just kind of Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So the first one is Stealing Infinity by Alison Noel. She is a pretty well-known author. This is her foray into young adult. And this book, I actually gave it 4 stars. I have it on my shelf, so the shelf real estate space indicates that it is a read that I really did enjoy. And the story here is that after agreeing to visit a mysterious nightclub with a friend, Natasha Clark discovers something really startling, which is a tombstone with her name on it. And her response is to laugh in the face of this very good-looking boy who is wearing a mask. And due to that response, she wakes up the next day and she receives an invitation to Grey Wolf Academy, which is located on a remote island, and it is run by this kind of secretive billionaire. Well, it come to find out, Grey Wolf Academy is your YA dark academia school location. So there is world building, there is a magic system that includes time travel, it includes history manipulation and rewriting, it includes art theft, and all this like political intrigue and mystery that naturally would come with that scenario. And as the book progresses, you trust those around Natasha less and less and less. It does contain attempted rape as well as parental abandonment and violence, but I really enjoyed the academy feel. I enjoyed the magic system that there is. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to kind of understand how it works. I think time travel is just kind of like that, but I really enjoyed Stealing Infinity, and the second one is on my anticipated releases list for 2023. Next is Lines of Courage by Jennifer Nielsen. This I actually gave 4.5 stars. And so this is written from the perspective of 5 young people during World War I. And this book gives insight into the experiences of people with different backgrounds from different nations. So we're introduced to an Austrian-Hungarian Jewish boy, a lovely German girl who trains homing pigeons, a Russian boy named Dmitry who has come from nothing and is now fighting on the front lines with no weapon. Kara, who lives on a British Red Cross train, which is really an incredible experience. And then Juliette, who lost her family in German-occupied France, and she is trying to figure out how to find them. Jennifer Nielsen expertly weaves all of their tales into this satisfying culmination. I think it is the perfect middle grade for this era. There's not a lot out there for World War I, and this is just a really great read. It does contain, obviously, war, trauma, child abandonment, child exploitation, work camps, bodily harm due to war. So next, I read The Fugitive Colors, and this is by Nancy Billiere, and this I gave 3.5 stars. So pairing an interesting subplot about the Huguenots that ended up living in England with the main character's silk design business gives the reader a really great insight into the weaving industry as well as just life in general in England during the 1700s. This is the second book in a series. I did not read the first one, and so it's not necessary to read the first one. It seems our main character, Genevieve Sturbridge's desire for a career as an artist is much stronger than many of the other desires that she has in her life. So mother, wife, friend, business owner, and despite trying to overcome her poor decisions in the past as a Huguenot, she seems to be dragged into this dark world of political espionage. So I really enjoyed the fascinating glimpse into Georgian England that this book gave. And the first half of the book is quite slow, especially considering it's the second. So you would think that, you would be able to kind of jump into Genevieve's life a little bit faster. But the second half was very exciting and intriguing as there's like a mystery that unfolds. So it does contain some physical attack, especially against females, but I think it is a solid historical fiction for that Georgian England time period. So another one that was on my anticipated release list last year was Lightfall 2, The Shadow of the Bird. This is by Tim Propst. I talk about this graphic novel series all the time. I gave this 5 stars. So just really quickly, if you haven't heard about it, Bee is the adopted granddaughter of the pig wizard on planet Xrpan. The artwork in this book, this series, is phenomenal. And walking through the forests of Xrpan with Bee is just like magical. It's these beautiful autumnal drawings. So anyway, Bee meets Cad, a Galdurian race of creatures who Xrpanians thought were extinct, and together they discover that Bee's adopted grandfather is missing and that there is an ancient danger that has awoken. So that's really the first book. This is obviously the second that came out recently, but I don't want to give too much away. So that's the general theme. I highly recommend this series. It does contain violence, but it is a wonderful book. So another one that I was highly anticipating, like so excited about, was Shinji Takahashi and the Mark of the Kotal by Julie Kagawa. One of the reasons why I was so excited about this is because Shinji Takahashi is a homeschooled boy. He is being raised by his aunt. They travel all over the world collecting ancient treasures for like a curiosity shop. But things go awry for Shinji when he seemingly awakens a magical garden and then receives its power. And he's eventually captured by the head of this evil corporation that wants to use that power for their own nefarious purposes. The best part of this book is Shinji's new friend Lucy, who, while having many secrets, also has really great tech skills, but she has this little robotic mouse named Tinker, which is really cute. But I gave this 2 stars. I was really disappointed with it. In fact, I purchased it and have donated it, dropped it in a little free library. I can't remember. I really just did not enjoy it. Just be aware that it contains a really creepy, there's like this evil character at the end that there's a conflict with for the denouement, and it is so creepy. I did not like it. Okay, so another one in early in the year that I read was An Arrow to the Moon by Emily Xrpan. I gave this 3 stars. This is another take on the archer and moon goddess Chinese myth, Hunter and Luna. Bet you can't guess what characters they are by their names. They are high schoolers who discover that their families actually know each other and that there are all these secrets. And for me, this retelling is pretty unremarkable. There's just not a lot about it that's like memorable or exciting that I would want to recommend. As we move into the next part of the year, I made a comment, I think in the summer, about these really cute books that had these lovely covers on them. And so I read one of them. It was called The Beekeeper at Elderflower Grove by Jamie Admons. It just was like this little cozy romance, but not like very wholesome, not really spicy or anything. And I was just drawn to it by the cover for the summer. So anyway, Kylie and Carrie's burgeoning relationship banter in an English town setting, coupled with 2 dual timeline mysteries. So there's like multiple mysteries going on at the same time, makes this just the epitome of a cozy mystery. It does contain fire trauma and war situations. Parts of it I had figured out, parts of it I didn't. So just a quick read. So I also read a graphic novel called Dreams Factory by Jerome Hammond. I found this on NetGalley and I gave it 2 stars. So Indira is a child worker at a local factory. She has a little brother who goes missing, and she tracks him to a local toy factory and discovers other missing children who have all had their memories erased, hence Dreams Factory. And while I enjoyed the steampunk vibe of the graphic art in the book, and I liked Indira as a character, she was very determined, I just found myself kind of confused as the characters seemed to appear and disappear. You couldn't really figure out how everyone fit. The ending was confusing. I actually needed to go back and like reread it a couple times to figure out what was happening. So that was something that I didn't enjoy. And then the other thing is while this is middle grade, it was very violent. And so I would not be comfortable giving this to your solid middle grade age student. It does contain violence and kidnapping. A middle grade that I did read was Violet and Joby in the Wild by Lynn Ray Perkins. I gave this 4 stars. It really is so cute. So Violet and Joby live inside of a house, and they are siblings, brother and sister, and they end up getting relocated out into the wilderness. And so it's just really cute how, you think about a mouse who's grown up like watching TV and running out into getting food to having to learn how to cope out in the wilderness. They fortunately meet this grandfatherly mouse figure who helps teach them about shelter and food and how to have fun and journey and travel. But it does have sibling separation, and it does have death of a loved one, and so a little bit of heavy content there for really kind of balancing out how cute it is, but the artwork is cute. And I actually listened to the audiobook with my kids and we really loved it. So the next one was a 5-star read for me. It was one that I recommended as one of the best books that I read in 2022, and that is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Kato. It's a phenomenal book. So after the revolution in Syria begins, Salama Kassab is a hospital volunteer with some medical training from previously being a pharmacy student. Life is now giving her far more medical skills experience than pharmaceutical school ever did, as she helps heal her war-torn fellow countrymen and women. Through her ability to mend injuries, she meets a man. She develops a chaste affinity for him, but she has a secret. Ever since she lost everyone in her family due to this war, except her sister-in-law Layla, she has been plagued by an imaginary visitor, Kof, who is a vicious tormentor in her mind, who's adamant that Salama needs to leave Syria. The way that the internal coping mechanisms to handle grief and horrifying trauma are handled in this book is just fascinating, heartbreaking, so well done by the author. It does contain parental and sibling deaths, war, torture, assault, child abuse, food scarcity, and PTSD. So next I read Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercroft. I gave this 3.5 stars. Thistlefoot is based on a Slavic folklore of a house with chicken legs and Baba Yaga, which I love that folklore. I loved the character development. There were 4 different first-person viewpoints. There was some, I would say, like magical realism in the plot. So you don't really have to like suspend your disbelief other than the house having chicken legs. And the resolution was surprising and satisfying. Isaac and Bellatine are raised in a family of professional puppeteers, but things kind of break down when the kids each discover that they have special gifts. One of the kids' gifts seems more prominent than the other, and they kind of split up as a family. Years later, the siblings receive notice, and that's kind of where we jump in with them, that they have an inheritance, and they discover that the house with the chicken legs is now theirs to share. But there's someone else who is after them, and that is the Long Shadow Man, who has these tendrils of evil that's able to impact humans, and he begins to target the people around Isaac and Bellatine. And so for their safety, they start to unravel this mystery surrounding the house with the chicken legs and why the Long Shadow Man is after them. For me, there was a lot of cursing that halted the flow of the dialogue for me. The harsh language was very jarring, and it just kind of pulled me out of the story. Otherwise, it was a thought-provoking tale and one that was emotionally moving. I thought a lot about the plot when I wasn't reading it and really wanted to get back into it. There is violence, same-gender relationship, infant death, suicidal thoughts, anti-Semitism, and death of loved ones. So next we have Raventhaw by Kaylin Josephson. I gave this one 4 stars, and I'll explain why. Annabella Belankay calls a magical inn home, and soon Colin Pierce checks in as a guest, also calling it home temporarily. Both kids have supernatural powers, believe it or not, and they have to figure out what has happened to Colin's family and then defeat an ancient Celtic creature that was determined that he was going to destroy everyone and everything on Halloween night. So a really great fall middle grade read, except there is a lot of violence. And so I would really push this to an older middle grade age. It does contain violence, parental death, animal resurrection. It's kind of hard to explain. And then there's like bodily possession. That's one of the gifts that Annabelle's sister has. So some kind of weird elements in there. So I fell into the trap of reading what was popular with The Very Irregular Society of Witches by Sangu Mandana. I also really loved the cover. So I gave this 4 stars. It would kind of edge closer down to 3.5, probably pretty easily. So Mika Moon has needed to hide her magic for her entire life, but she gets around the rules by posting videos of herself pretending to be a witch and doing magic, but it is magic. The videos are not meant to like out herself, but they do. And she soon receives an invitation to act as like a magical tutor to 3 burgeoning witches who need to work on controlling their powers. And so Mika moves into the Nowhere House. She meets another resident. There are a few of them, but Jamie is a standout. He is the grumpy to her sunshine. Love that trope. And luckily, he's also this handsome librarian who is very protective of his 3 young charges. And so there's mystery and romance abound. So there's a bit of cursing, which isn't a big deal, but this is a little bit more spicy than what I normally read. So I feel like, you could see that we were getting to that point in the story. And so I was able to kind of move through it quickly, but just a little bit more at the end than what I normally would read. So I also was privileged to be included in NetGalley for reading The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is the 2nd book in the Bone Houses series. And so this has water divination, fae interference, a fairy tale retelling, and I am here for all of that. So this was advertised as a heist with a twist. So I relished the slow uncovering of each of the characters' why. Since I've said I'm not really that big into like romance or spice, the subtlety of romance in this book was perfect. It's not really distracting, but it adds to the mystery of like what's really going on here with this ragtag group of criminals. This tale contains treachery, and with that comes the constant thought that every character is really kind of unreliable, even the main character, except for the sneezing corgi, that's Trefor. He seems to be the only one who deserves and maintains trust. The found family trope is also upended, which only adds kind of to that mistrust of the characters. The fantasy world building in this is phenomenal, as is to be expected with Emily Lloyd Jones. She regales the reader with picturesque descriptions of towns, cities, islands, caves, oceans, all of the places that the characters travel. So I loved the resilience that our main character exhibited when faced with making decisions, and the characters around her as well. And the ending was phenomenal. The epilogue gave you a connection to bone houses, and so this Easter egg just really like connected, like you could connect the two tales. I would highly recommend this for anyone who enjoys YA fantasy and tough female characters. There is a same-sex relationship, just kind of like a subplot, not a heavy focus or anything. And there is violence, death, extreme peril, all the things that make fantasy great. So next I read Wild is the Witch by Rachel Griffin. Iris Gray writes a curse on Pike Elder just as she is attempting to burn it up. She doesn't really mean for him to be cursed, but a local owl swoops down and ingests the curse. And as an amplifier, the owl has the power to inflict the curse on a much larger area than just Pike. And so Iris heads out into the woods to find the bird and get the curse. And Pike naturally goes with her as he's an ornithologist in training. But he's oblivious to the real reason as to why Iris is searching after this owl. So after reading Rachel Griffin's The Nature of Witches, I feel like the world is the same. I don't know if she intended it to be that way, but I did feel like I was thrown back into the same world, but with different characters, which is fine. But the problem that I had is that while that world is enjoyable to be in, the characters' personalities and their banter fell flat. So I don't want to give too much away with spoilers or anything, but I just all along was like, Iris cursed the boy that's going with her. She doesn't tell him that, and he's just going along completely oblivious, which is not a trope that I like. I don't like the lying manipulation trope. I really like honesty in my books and in real life, and so that part I didn't like. And then just how it ended, I was like, this is not realistic. If someone told me that they cursed me, I just did not think it was realistic. So I gave it 3 stars, partially because I really like Rachel Griffin. She has Bring Me Your Midnight coming out, I think, in the fall. I liked Nature of Witches. I thought the premise was intriguing. I just really did not like this book. So I also read Daryl Open World by Oliver Peru and Remy Guerin. This is a graphic novel. This is apparently a French YA series. This is one that was translated into English. I liked this book. As a prominent, legendary journalist, Daryl has the ability to move through realms and other worlds. And as he does so, he reports on various newsworthy occurrences. But lately there seems to be shifts across the realm that previously people thought that was impossible, but now it's within the bounds of reason. And so with the support of this crew consisting of a fairy, an elf, a ghost, friend girl, who may want to be more than friends, Daryl needs to unravel the mystery of who is behind all of this before there's this total collapse. My main issue with this is with the artwork, because it's a graphic novel. With the version of the graphic novel that I read on NetGalley, it was a little bit difficult to tell the difference between the main character and the ghost character. I was trying to figure out, okay, who is this? Especially when the viewpoint was really close up. But it was definitely something I was trying to, figure out, and just a fun afternoon to spend. It does contain violence, obviously, but a fun, cute read. So next I read Nora and the Immortal Palace by M.T. Khan. She wrote Kiki Breaks a Kingdom, which I really enjoyed. Nora I did not enjoy as much. Our main character, Nora, is a child worker in the mica mines of a Pakistani village in order to help her mother with supporting their family. And working in the mines is very dangerous. And Nora discovers that one of her kind of impetuousness, her friend gets trapped and presumed dead. And she decides that she's going to go back into this collapsed tunnel to find her friends. She ends up crossing into the world of the Jinn, and despite her mother's warning, she attends a party at a Jinn hotel. I loved the inner workings of the genie culture that you get in this book. There's a heavy focus on family and friendship. Obviously, I mean, she works for her family. She throws it caution to the wind for friends. And you even see that within the hotel as well, that she's very dedicated to helping the people who are like in her group. And I'd love to see Nora grow and mature. It is an Own Voices book, as the author is a Pakistani Muslim, which really lended like credibility and culture to it. I think it's a solid, captivating middle grade tale. I think you could kind of see what was coming. It just wasn't, to me, it wasn't as great as Kiki Breaks a Kingdom. This does have kidnapping, child labor, and child exploitation in it. So I also, from NetGalley, got to read Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan was one of my top favorite books in 2022, so I was really excited to read the sequel. So it's the second in a duology that follows Shinjin, who lives on the moon with her goddess mother until the day she decides to use forbidden magic, and then she has to flee to the celestial kingdom where she can't divulge who she is or from where she came. There is kidnapping, violence, death of loved ones, and that is the first in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, similar in Heart of the Sun Warrior, but I don't want to give too much away. There is a love triangle in the first book. You really feel like that is resolved by the time you get to the second book. But the second book is really, it's a departure from the first book. I really liked how the love interests was not like such a huge part of the plot, so I really enjoyed Heart of the Sun Warrior as well. So next I read Orion and the Starborn by KB Hoyle. This is published by Owl's Nest Publishers, which is a small publishing house. I love supporting them. I love reading the books that KB Hoyle writes. Orion is transported back to his home planet cluster. Love those sci-fi middle grade books to unravel royal intrigue and nefarious plots. But not all is resolved in this, as there is a pretty big cliffhanger indicating that there's more to come for Orion. So she's doing a lot of world building in this to kind of explain how you transport among the planets. And so she's obviously building the base there for other books. It does contain marital infidelity and abandonment. And I gave that 4 stars. I think that it's a solid middle grade. We have a copy ourselves. My oldest is going to read it, so great book. So next I have Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. This I gave 4.5 stars. This is the second in the series of the Legendborn series. I thought originally it was going to be a duology, and I think Tracy Deonn has made it into a bigger series. So this is the second in that series, and it follows Bree, who is a black girl who is on her first night at UNC Chapel Hill. She discovers magical beings fighting horrific beasts bent on destruction. Her mind is not erased by this magical boy who was attempting to do that, and instead she's trying to reconcile what she now knows is out there with this life that she thought she was going to be leading. So there is a love triangle. Don't want to give away too much because Legendborn, which is the first one, was phenomenal. I loved it's King Arthur, as well as getting into like the root magic that comes from an African heritage. It is such a great book. I loved Bloodmarked. Again, it really was kind of a departure and not a direction that I thought we would go. And the ending to Bloodmarked, the kind of denouement, is intense. There is kidnapping, violence, abandonment, slavery, rape, body possession. So a lot of crazy things, but such a great series. So I also read, we're almost to the end, The Vermilion Emporium by Jamie Pacton. Quinta, Twain, and a magical emporium all meet and get entangled up in starlight lace making at their own peril. There is self-injurious behavior in this, abandonment, sibling and parental death. I felt like the first half of the book built up to be really great. it stalled out, and then the ending, like the second half of the book was like almost a different, it just was a different book almost. I mean, things were similar, but it just really changed the direction. The ending itself was great. So the buildup was great, but the middle to the end got dragged down. So I just wish it had gone a different way. So I gave it 3.5 stars. The Emporium and the Starlight Lace is hard to beat. So 4.5 stars. One of my honorable mentions, I think, for 2022 was We Are the Scribes by Randy Pink. Grief-stricken Ruth receives scrolls from Harriet Jacobs, who was a slave who wrote, in real life, incidents in the life of a slave girl in 1861. I talked more about this in my favorite books of 2022, which I can link. I really loved this book. One thing that I didn't love, just be warned, it does contain swear words, and it really does kind of jar and jolt you. It just, you're kind of going along at the beginning, and there's just suddenly there's curse words, and it doesn't bother me usually, but it just felt like weirdly placed. There is sibling death, parental abandonment, obviously slavery, cruelty, PTSD, grief, but still a book that I would recommend you read. Some really great books in there that had come out and were on my anticipated releases list, and some that were flops. So I think that's kind of what you get when there's not a lot of reviews out there. You just kind of hear that, hey, this sounds like something interesting. And I will continue to have anticipated reads that I'm looking forward to coming out, trying to figure out how to read them, whether from the library or NetGalley, or maybe purchasing them or reading them on Scribd. But really do intend on continuing this idea of finding books that are getting ready to be published, newly published, reading them, and telling you guys about them so you can see if maybe that's something that you would be interested in reading. Let me know if you've read any of these or have any books that are going to be published in 2023 that you're interested in reading. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.